As instructional designers, why should we care about interactivity? Why is it so important in a world with prepackaged courses and online courses? When we consider Gagne's 9 events of instruction, one of the core principles is the interactivity, that application of knowledge. So Chuck and I are going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to break it down and we're going to really uncover why interactivity is so important to your design work. All right, Chuck, when we think of instructional design, what does interactive actually mean? Because sometimes I think we make it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, interactivity is a key to good instructional design. Let's be honest. And we can look at it from theory forward, or we can look at it from practical application backwards if you want. But what we're talking about and what I teach and what I honestly firmly believe is that learning should be a conversation. If it's not a conversation, then everything else has to move up and take its place. And that's pretty hard to do. And in a world of AI and lots of canned packages for training and this notion of being online, asynchronous, and where we have moved from the classroom to today's learning environment, which is all fine, we have to think about as designers, how do we make this still a valid product? How do we create conversation? You can create that in any vehicle that you use to deliver training. But as a designer, we have to think about how that works. And it's so incredibly important because if it's just broadcasting, if it's just someone talking, whether they're alive or on a video or on your computer, if you don't have a conversation, then you're not doing as well as you can as a designer. And there's certainly times we have no choice about our product and they get what they get. But when we have any say and any ability to really influence this product and this process, center it on having a conversation.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's say that I'm designing a course and there is a section where I need to present information. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I do not want to create cognitive overload, but this information needs to get to the learner somehow. Yeah. What is the easiest way to turn some of that, of me talking at learners, into something that they're actually participating in? Now, you said discussion is a really great opportunity. Are there other mechanisms or additional mechanisms to that discussion that can really engage learners and get them opening up about the topic at hand?
Yeah. Especially when talking about adults, what you want to do is engage them in what they already know. Talk to them about their experiences. Have them share their experiences. And I just did mandated training, conformance training. And what I build into this is about every 3 to 4 minutes is a question. So has this ever happened to you? If it did happen to you, how did you feel about it? What did you do? What was your reaction? How did you address it? And I have found this to be a really powerful tool. And especially if I'm teaching face-to-face. If I'm doing this synchronously, I can do the same thing because then we can do comment sections. It's fun to run comments when I teach online synchronously because, you know, they could, why does your hair look like that? Or you need to get some sun, you know, all the comments you get that they think you don't see. So you can go through that kind of funny part of it, but the other part of it is you're having conversation. So it doesn't matter whether it's chat or whatever it is. And what you have to remember is it doesn't matter what age you are, what generation you are, you have to think about what these folks are as learners. Okay, how do they communicate now? Do they talk on the phone? Do they spend most of their time texting or chatting? Do they post on TikTok? And how do they communicate with their peers? How do they communicate with their families? And I don't think my family is any different, but right now we pretty much communicate by text. We have family text and we have individual kid texts and all kind of stuff. We have different channels that we do that in, but that's how we communicate. So if that's my comfort level and, you know, my kids range in age from 32 to in their 40s, That's how we communicate. But look at your population as an instructional designer. How are they communicating? And that's one of the things that you should ask in analysis. You need to have this down cold. What is their comfort spot for talking? How do they communicate? It's not vocal. It's not like it was when you and I were younger and in school. They're doing it electronically. That's where their comfort zone is. And we can talk about type A's and B's and C's and introverts and extroverts and all the rest. But really what it comes down to is you need to build in what's comfortable for them. So that's why I often ran a chat below my screen when I was teaching in person, and I still do. See, here, put your comments here, and you'll get some weird stuff, and that's okay. I mean, that's just people having fun. But you will also get questions, and you'll get, I don't understand that, and you'll get all kinds of stuff. So if you think about communications when you're designing and having conversations, you have to get beyond this point that there's one person talking.
Yeah. And, one of the things I've sat in so many different types of trainings for work and whatnot. And one of the things that really bugs me is when a facilitator will say, does everyone understand? Because who is going to say no? Like, well, some people will. Like, I've done that, but it's like, it's not a comfortable thing, especially when you have like a cohort that's just beginning. They're just the first day in class together. They don't know each other. They don't want to look stupid in front of each other. They don't want to say the wrong thing. And then you say something like, does everybody understand?
Yeah.
And everybody doesn't, but nobody's going to tell you that they don't. And so, some of the things that I've done in that situation, instead of asking a blanket question like that, is, I will ask them, well, what would you do if, and then whatever the scenario is, or what problems have you experienced with this, whatever the topic is we're discussing, so that instead of me talking about the topic ad nauseum, it would be more like, okay, I give them a few facts and I'm saying, okay, let's break this down. Who has had this experience and whatever, and then just kind of draw it out of them that way. Yeah. It's so much better than just saying, does everybody understand? Because that leads nowhere. It's kind of like a yes or no question.
No, if you have to ask that as a facilitator, then you miss the whole game. Get on another train. You miss this one. And it's just the honest truth about it. And as a designer, you can build that in very easily to what you offer facilitators and teachers and whatever. Yeah. And it's very, it's a shift. I mean, designers have been around for a while. We got to get off of this old one-to-one thing. We're not standing in front of the classroom anymore, even if we are. That's not what we're doing. We're not communicating like that. If that's your only channel of communications, then okay, good luck. But even in the things that I do that are mandated, and mandated is, it could be, I'm going to learn this new product I have to deal with, or it could be, I've taken a job in the railroads and I need to learn how to be a conductor. I mean, that's mandated. It's just so there's tens of thousands of different mandated things that you have to do. But the ones that are successful are where they have conversations. Okay, this is what it's going to be like for you on the job. Okay, sometimes you're going to report to work at 2 a.m. and it's going to be a blizzard. And guess what? You're going to get on that train and you're going to spend the next 10 hours driving to where you're driving. And the chances of it going flawlessly are about zero. At some point, something will happen during this time. And, take it out of that context, put it in any context of any mandated training format. So whether you're working in a factory, whether you're in a service industry, whatever you happen to do. And if you're designing for them, then have conversations within that context. Don't talk about generalities that nobody cares about. Talk specifically about what is going to happen to them in these particular situations. So it can be the same for a barista or law enforcement or a paramedic or someone that's working in the railroad industry or someone that's working in a factory or someone who is in construction. Or as we always talk about our apprentices when they get into the trades and actually go, 60 floors up in the air hanging steel. Put them in that environment. Always do your learning in that context and have that conversation. And you can do these things even if it's a packaged product that they look at online. You can stop the online training and ask questions. You can have chat requirements. So you need to post and talk about these things. And even though it's not the same in terms of us being in the same room talking to each other, it still gets us to the same point of sharing conversation, sharing our experience, sharing our fears. Okay, maybe I don't want to get up at 2 and get to work and drive a train through a blizzard. Well, okay, none of us do. Right?
I certainly don't.
Sometimes that's all you have to say. Sometimes, like, oh, it's not, yeah, none of us want to do this, but this is what we do for a living. And we're going to make the best of it. And, I talk about my law enforcement stuff, and I'm not going to, bean that too hard. But, I mean, just, okay, call me every name you want. That's fine. I doubt you'll find one I haven't heard. Give her a shot. You need to get to the point where you realize that you're not the only one who has these feelings. You're not the only one that shares these concerns. You're not the only one who has these questions. And as a learner, that's an incredibly powerful place to be. And as designers, we need to think about this. How do we give this safe spot for them to have a conversation with us? How can we get them to the safe spot of saying, okay, this doesn't seem right to me, or I don't know that I can do this, or I'm not going to feel comfortable doing that, or I can't believe I've agreed to do this. And then somebody's going to say to them, that's what we all do. We all felt this way. This is part of the path to get to be a professional in whatever field we are in. And it's perfectly normal to feel these insecurities or not to have all the answers. That's okay. That's why this is a learning process. And the more we can humanize these conversations, even if they are completely asynchronous, the more we are going to be successful in getting people to mastery and making these products what they really could be.
One of the tactics I use a lot, too, actually, is I do peer to peer, because I feel like so much magic comes out of those peer to peers.
Yeah.
They peer up.
Yeah.
I ask them to solve something.
Yep.
And then they report back to the whole class. And because they're in peers, they feel less vulnerable, it seems. Because they've worked through their thoughts with somebody before actually speaking them out loud. So that's one tactic. And also I like to do teachbacks when it comes to, like, even if it's dry content, or I don't want to be the one, the sage on the stage, I know you've said that so many times, and that sticks in my head. And it's the last thing I want to do. And so I feel like teachbacks are another really good example of how you can turn this sort of information that they need to know into something that they actually have to put their hands on and really roll up their sleeves and get into that material. And, when you teach something, you learn it. I don't know what the stat is, but I know it's like 70% of the time when you're 70% more likely to remember something after in a learning event if you've taught it. It might even be more than that. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on those two things?
Well, I am a big believer in peer-to-peer. And peer-to-peer can be 1-on-3, it can be 1-on-class, it can be, anything you want to make it. I don't believe in group work. And as you know, I have never assigned group work in graduate school. I refuse to do it because I don't want to play cop on personalities and people are busy and don't do the stuff. And then the group gets into this whole thing. I don't do group work. If you can design it,
and I loved you for that, just so you know.
I mean, if you can make it work, have at. My respect to you, but I've just found it not to be useful. But what I can do is have people talk to each other and share their experiences. Because if one person has had an experience, then somebody else has had the experience. And somebody else may have had it and solved it a different way. And it just depends on your content. It depends on your population. It depends on whether you're just doing a brief overview of something or whether you're into a 2-year certification program. All these things are part of your system, and all these variables will determine what you need to do or should do. But I think the point of this, and we keep getting back to this in a lot of videos, is stop broadcasting to learners. Start having conversations, not only from facilitation to learner, but from learner to learner, and also from learner to facilitation. Teach back. I mean, one of the biggest things that I do when I do train to trainers is see one, teach one. And it's the same philosophy of I want you to watch it, and then I want you to teach it back, and let's figure out how it's different. Maybe you've made it better. And if you have, next time I'll teach it that way. And that happens. Believe me, So you want to look at this as a continuous process and product. If you look at designing courses as a one-off, then you're never going to be very good at it. And really what you want to create is environment for learning and environment for conversation. And not only will the learners appreciate this and do better at things, but within organizations, it really is powerful because now they feel like they're being listened to. And one thing I've always said, and especially in conformance training, help us. If you don't feel like you're being listened to, and if you don't feel like your opinion and your emotional attachment to one thing or another is not being held as important to the organization, you're going to start castling. And now you've got 15 people in a group castling because nobody's listening to them. And this is where training can break through these barriers over time, especially if you start with conversation. And it's like, okay, well, they may not agree with me, but at least they're listening. And over time, you can come to some really powerful teaching moments with this. And I'm not going to get into them here because, each one is personalized by content and population. But, think beyond delivering a package and walking on. We can do so much better, Dennise. Good designers create community. Good designers create conversation. Good designers create training that is more than just listening. And once you get past that, you can do wonderful things, incredible things as a designer.
Well stated. Wow. So interactive training, folks, doesn't necessarily mean more complicated design, right? Sometimes it's simply giving learners a chance to talk about things, work through it, make a decision, and actually use what they are learning. Thanks so much for joining us in this episode, and we're going to see you in the next Instructional Design from the Ground Up video.